Learn to improve conversions and generate more leads with the video podcast at marketingoptimization.tv.
Hi, and welcome to Marketing Optimization with AlexDesigns. I am your host, Alex Harris, and today we're chatting with Phil from UserTesting.com. How you doing, Phil?
Good. How are you, Alex?
Excellent. To get started, what would be your definition of optimization and why is it beneficial?
Yeah, so my definition of optimization is a simple one. I like to make things as simple as possible. So optimization is just making something better. And I think no matter kind of what you're working on, there are always ways that you can improve it. And hopefully kind of why that's important. Hopefully everyone in the audience understands that like you should always be pushing to make your things better. And I think specifically around your website and conversion rates and that sort of thing, by optimizing for that is how your company is going to make more money, which at the end of the day is what makes us all happy and keeps us in business. So I think that's probably why it's most important.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been using user testing for a while now, but really last year in 2014, I really ramped up, using user testing a lot for basically almost every project that we really work on. And I think one of the biggest benefits of getting the best value out of using your particular software is understanding your target audience right, making sure that you find the right people to watch going through your site, your competitor sites, and specifically Google search queries. Now, I use Google Analytics, and I go in and I kind of figure out what that demographic is from a visitor's perspective.
Yeah. So
to not make assumptions, we look at specifically what devices that they're using, what browsers that they're using, and that kind of plays into the people that we would actually, contract to actually watch and go through the site. Is that kind of how you tell people to find the best people for the right tests?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Actually, I mean, that's much better than a great place to start. That's probably the perfect way to do it. It certainly depends on what you're testing too. For the things that you're testing of like what is going to get someone in my target market to convert, then yeah, you definitely want to test with folks who are closest to your target market. And I think the way that we describe to do it is exactly how you just did. So use your data and use your analytics to find out kind of who are the people on your website and then test with those groups. But there are other things where I found that you don't need to get as specific with your demographics. And that sort of thing, if you're really just testing kind of for usability, like can folks use my website? Like can they figure out like where the pricing page is and what to do and that sort of stuff? I'd recommend just kind of running tests with wide open demographics because you'll be able to get that feedback pretty quickly. It's almost like if you had like a broken door, I think this is a common example, but like you wouldn't need to have someone in your exact target market tell you that the door is broken and they can't walk through it. You could have anyone. But for other things, you want more specific people.
Yeah, well, that brings up a good point. Finding things that are broken in general. Majority of website owners that I deal with, they don't buy their own products. And if you don't know what's broken on your website, more than likely you have some conversion problems.
Oh, yeah.
So watching people go through user testing is kind of like that form of QA. I think I tell people when I consult, the quick wins to conversion a lot of times happen in that QA process, testing your site on old browsers, on old IE browsers, or now moving into mobile and the tablet experience. Have you seen people, really find ways to take that qualitative data and then use that insight for specific experiments? What would be some examples of people who are using user testing in that way?
That's a really good question. And I think the one that comes to mind for me, which is an easy one because it's something that we did internally. So we actually just recently redesigned user testing. So it's from the ground up, we redid every page, which is not something that I'd recommend a lot of folks doing, and we had very specific reasons to do it. And obviously lots of qualitative user testing sessions to find like where were people getting confused on the old site, like where were they getting hung up, where were they getting stuck and frustrated. And then we made sure that when we did the new site, we addressed all of those issues. And I think that's a good way to just approach A/B testing in general. Like rather than following your gut, use user tests and like get qualitative feedback from folks that would actually use your product and see where they're getting stuck, and then address that rather than addressing the bucket list of things that we all have that we want to fix.
Yeah, because as I do consulting and website reviews, I come up with, a laundry list of things that probably the client's probably never going to get to, but at least it shows how much really opportunity is really out there. And then you can kind of go and prioritize based on what your immediate needs are or what your main goals are.
Yep.
So let's talk about initially, user testing. Maybe just a general question. If someone doesn't know what user testing is, how would you kind of explain that definition?
Yeah, I guess so. At its simplest, user testing is watching someone use your product or your website or your app, and you give them some tasks to do and watch them do it. So you would say, come to my site and try to buy a pair of shoes, for example. Probably a bad example, and then you watch them do that. Very specifically, what our company user testing does is we just make that entire process really easy for folks. So with our software, you just say, I want someone in this age range who does this type of stuff, and I want them to do these 7 things on my website. And then in about an hour, you get a video back of someone doing that. So it's a real quick and easy way to see what an outsider thinks of your site or app.
Yeah, I remember I worked for a .com for a long time, and I've always been a web designer, and we did a lot of user experience testing. And I remember how expensive it used to be to perform these tasks. Yeah. We would rent these machines and then create a lab within our company and actually bring people in and then watch them do that. And there was even specific tools that you put in your eyes for eye tracking. It was all kinds of science experiment going on. It is such a relief that I can just go to a website, put a URL in, and find the right people to go through a site, and then watch them go through it. There's no renting of a lab or machinery that's really needed. We don't need to look like a transformer as we're going and watching people's websites.
I love it.
Yeah, but it's really one of the most beneficial things you can do. Almost every single time you're about to release your website, a new website or new site redesign, it's so important just to get that feedback, and this is just an easy way to do it. And I love how quick it comes back. As long as you pick the right people in the right way, you can get the right feedback within really just a couple hours.
Yeah, definitely. I would say sometimes you even get it back as fast as 45 minutes or so. Yeah. Sometimes it's really quick. And I think you hit it exactly right. It depends on who you're choosing. So if you wanted to only have your tests run with dentists over 70 years old in a very specific small town of New Mexico, that might take a little bit longer than an hour, but most come really quick.
Yeah, and then you can also segment them out based on mobile versus tablet versus Android versus iOS. So there's a lot of segmentation to really ensure that the right person is watching your right area. Now, let's talk about getting the best insight out of that data. I think I've become pretty good at this. So I'm going to give you my scenario of how I set up a user test.
Okay.
So as I said, I go through and I find the specific browsers or devices that people are using, and I make sure that I pick those to only bring those people in. In the case, a lot of people use different versions of Internet Explorer, so maybe we'll pick Internet Explorer using a PC and so forth. That's kind of like the easy part. Now you're going to move into the next section, which is actually you're picking the specific questions. This can become a little bit tricky. You want to ensure that at every step of that user that you watch, that you're going to get the right data. So the first step is all about that first impression. You can either try to do the 5-second test, or you can just ask specific questions on really what their first impression is on about trust, or if they can find the right product they're looking for, and then have them actually go through the actual checkout process. That is probably baked into my first and second question. Get them to achieve the first task that you want them to do really right away. And then moving into, we usually have about 5 or 6 questions. In the third question, we'll have them now leave your site and go over to a competitor's site and maybe do the exact same thing, try to find similar products. But along the way, have them say what they liked about your competitors versus yours. And just pause for a second. What I really want you to get out of this is that people will tell you specifically what claims that you're making that they don't believe, what they don't trust. And eventually you'll start to see patterns in all the people who actually go through your site. And you can use those language patterns back in your testing, in your headlines, in your call to actions, and so forth. And then the fourth and fifth step is all basically about some additional tasks. Maybe you want them to sign up for your newsletter or find a return policy. That's really big. Anything to build additional conversion aspects. Now, after this is all done, it's like you have a map to someone's mind. People are telling you literally the voice of the customer, and you have a ton of insight based on just one or two users at a time.
Yeah, you got it down to a science. I love it.
Yeah, it's funny because we were talking earlier, and I'm working on my new book, and this is one of the biggest parts of getting the right data from the tools. Because there's so many tools, tactics to use it, but if you don't do it in the right way, then you're not going to get back valuable insight that's actually going to make a difference. Yeah. Have you guys produced any particular case studies? I would be interested in maybe learning about of how people are using your software in different scenarios.
Yeah, we got a bunch listed on our website. If you just check out, we have a kind of a whole case study section where we outline some of that. I think you will probably not be surprised by anything that you read there because it sounds like you're using us in lots of creative ways. I wanted to touch on one thing when you were talking about testing competitors. Just a slight spin on that I've done at previous companies that's worked well is basically trying to kind of hide what company you're with or which one that you're vested in so that you don't get biased feedback. The people who are testing the site, they're not going to see your email address or they're not going to know who you are. So generally I like to be kind of sneaky and I'll say, go to company X and do these things, go to company Y, do these things, and then which one do you like better without giving any indication of which one is who's asking, so they don't feel like they have to please you. And then in my next test, I'll kind of flip it and I'll put the other one first and the next one second. And just some sneaky things there to try to get some super unbiased feedback.
Yeah, that is actually a really great point, and that's actually something I need to consider actually going forward. Because people don't like to talk badly, even though you will get good criticism. Yeah. They will tend to have a little bit of bias towards if you tell them that you own a particular website or so forth. But I love how you find and uncover things that you kind of maybe never have thought about before, and that can really build into your different hypotheses for your experimenting.
Yeah, and I found that even when testing, like you mentioned competitors again, I feel like, I don't know, I'm going to keep bringing that up because it's such a brilliant insight you have. I get lots of ideas from doing that too, because you'll see the tester really loved that part of my competitor site, and I think I could do something a little bit better than that, and then it gives you an idea of something to add to your site that you never would have thought of otherwise. So there's definite value in that.
Yeah, and these are not things that you only have to watch once and forget about. After you've done enough testing, you may want to go back and watch some of those old user tests again before you start to make those actual full changes. Because eventually you'll start to realize of why you've started to test something, because you will eventually forget, and it will be eye-opening of what they may find, or just make you feel better or your client feel better of how far you've come from the changes that you initially found.
Yeah. And I think it's a really good way to kind of settle arguments too, or at least to maybe prevent arguments. So if you're an agency and you have clients and you're trying to convince them that this is the way to do it, if you tell them this is bad, that only gets you so far. But if you can show them a video of users struggling in that specific thing that you're trying to get them to change, that goes a long way in helping your cause.
Yeah, and if you're a consultant or you're web designer or developer, watching these tests, it does take time, and it's not really something that the client likes to do in general. So this is definitely a differentiator of a service that you offer, because it's time consuming, it's not sexy, it could be a little bit cumbersome, but it's important. And once you find those insights, sometimes I'll even record a clip of a section, and I'll just send it to a client. Oh,
that's awesome.
You have a bug on this particular page, and here's someone who just went through it. So I don't have to actually even go ahead and do a QA. I do that all the time, especially on mobile.
They must love it. You must look like a genius. Like, how did they already get a video of someone doing that? That's great. I love that.
Yeah, and I even will send, a lot of times the client usually will go through at least one or two of the videos, and it'll be like just an aha moment immediately, like, oh my God, I can't believe our site has been like that for months and we haven't even tested our own checkout process.
Yeah, I love it. And I found, like, we talked a little bit about if you have clients, but even like when I was in-house at headsets.com, we would run tons of user tests, and we like really liked as a team, or once a month we would all huddle around a computer and watch some of the tests. And you could like speed up the videos. I don't know if you ever do that. We used to do it all the time, where
awesome.
Play them in double time and you get most of the insights, but you can still like get through a ton really quickly. And it was a lot of fun to watch it as a team and come up with ideas.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, to sit together and focus on brainstorming on different ideas based on watching people go through those movies, for sure. Yeah, definitely double up the speed. Don't watch them real time, because you can get through them a lot quicker, for sure. So, now that we've gone through tests and we watched them, and now we have some data insight, we want to use that qualitative data to actually apply to our websites overall. Mm-hmm. Is there a way, or are people doing things that you may have never thought of with your software, or just thinking outside the box? I'm always looking to try to find ways to really push the edge of find new things of what people are doing. Have anybody used your software in unique ways to test different scenarios?
Yeah, we got all sorts of kind of cool things happening, and I bet you've probably tested a lot of these, but they'll be different for hopefully the people listening. And I think some of the neat ones that I've come across are really just testing at different stages of the process, which seems like a duh moment when like you hear it, but I think very few people do it. So before launching like a B version of an A/B test, like you can user test the wireframe, and you can user test the prototype, and you can save yourself a lot of development time. The other like fun thing that I see folks doing is testing email. It's not so like if you're sending a newsletter to hundreds of thousands of people or 10,000 people, like you should get feedback on what that experience is like, and how does your subject line resonate, and like all of that. And then the last one, not to blabber on for forever, is with our service, like you don't have to put JavaScript anywhere, so you can literally test any page. So the folks that get creative with that, I always look up to. So it's like you can test someone just searching for your product. So if you sell like headbands, I don't know why I thought of headbands, but just tell someone to like search for headbands however you normally would. And then you can just watch them as they like look at Google, look at your social pages, click on ads, and like you can learn so much from that stuff. So that's always what inspires me, is like people who come up with kind of creative ways like that to make their sites better.
Can you test people opening up emails in Outlook?
Yes. Yeah. It takes a little bit of planning. It's not as easy as creating those other tests, because you kind of got to coordinate a little bit and get their email address and then have them record the screen and stuff. It's definitely doable, and you get some really good results from it.
That's really interesting, because I mean, even if you use Gmail, there's like 4 different versions of Gmail. So so spending the $50 for one test for 100,000 person drop, it's so beneficial to ensure that's really working. Also, what we had done in a couple prototypes where we tested, which had real copy on them, we had the user actually read the content out loud. So we can just listen to it, of how it kind of resonated in our ears, and have people, if they can read it easily, if it was easy to understand. This was more for a more complicated product, but it really was an eye-opener. It was way too complex. We just needed to make it simpler into bullets. But listening to someone read something out loud could help in your persuasion tactics.
Oh, I love that so much. We do that too. I call it like the advanced version of reading out loud yourself. It's like, it's so great. Like we'll do it with blog posts and stuff even.
Oh yeah.
And we want to see like, do they get it? Is their message come across? Like, would they share it socially? And like, we can watch all of that and hear them as they read it. It's really helpful.
Yeah, and if you're doing SEO or pay-per-click advertising, watching people go through search engine results, or specific areas of what you're trying to accomplish, there's so much segmentation that that really could occur. You can separate, pay-per-click advertising from natural search. So there's really a lot of opportunity for you to use the data in the right way for each channel, for each device, for each experience. And then once you actually implement these tests and test them, and more than likely they're going to win because the customer is telling you what their pains and problems are. So now you know exactly how to change them and make them better. Almost every test that we run when we do this process of collecting the qualitative data properly, watching people go through the site, 9 out of 10 times it's usually a winner. It's actually almost rare that we lose on some tests that don't go through this process anymore.
Oh, that's great. I love to hear it. Yeah, I know that like the general statistics for A/B tests is that most of the time the B version loses. At least that's what I've read.
Yeah.
And I've had the same experience as you. Like when we really invest in making changes that are based on user feedback, it wins far more often than not. You're really putting the odds in your favor.
Yeah, and especially it's going to happen more at the early part of a certain particular project. Coming onto a site that hasn't been optimized, obviously there's a lot more opportunity for bigger gains in those short-term wins. You're going to get that law of diminishing returns, and it's going to be harder to make things win in the longer term, but at least you're going down the path of using that data in the right way.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's tell people a little about how they can find out more about user testing and maybe some of the webinars that you guys have to offer.
Yeah, definitely. So the best way to stay up to date with us is just to head over to usertesting.com, and we're really active on the blog, so usertesting.com/blog. I think the most helpful thing for most people is on our site we have a resource section, and if you check that out, we're putting on webinars about every week. We're always coming out with new ebooks and white papers and all that sort of stuff, and it's always updated on that section. So check it out.
Awesome. To close out, what would be one thing that optimizers can do to use that qualitative data and take their conversion rates to that next level?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about it over the last 20 minutes or so, and I think so if people can do that, then they'll have a big step up on their competition. And I think to kind of sum up what that is, it's really to, rather than just running your A/B tests or making recommendations based on gut feel and experience, which is important and you should rely on, but use that in addition to user feedback. And if you start building your site around the feedback that you're getting from users, you'll be much more successful. At least I've seen that most of the time.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
Thank you for watching the Marketing Optimization Podcast with AlexDesigns. Please remember to subscribe to all of the videos in my YouTube channel. Thank you.